And kind of the opposite of that is social media because there's so much information. And especially with the reels now, some of them are like 10 seconds long. It's just this constant input and influx of information. And I find it overwhelming. And sometimes I'll go on my phone and I will just scroll. So I've deleted most of the apps from my phone so I don't get too
Mm-hmm.
distracted. So I might just go
Mm-hmm.
to my music app and I'll stroll and
Mm-hmm.
I'll look for music
Mm-hmm.
and I might stroll for a
Mm-hmm.
few minutes. And this
Mm-hmm.
strolling is pretty much aimless. It's like, why am I strolling? But I think it's because
Mm-hmm.
I've used Instagram for a decade. It's like, okay, I'm just scrolling because it's like second nature to me.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think I can definitely jump off of that. Like, that's one of the most worrisome things to me, and I've noticed the same thing, which is why I really just tried to kind of get that under control over the last few years. Is like you're scrolling because it's like a habit, like it's all habitual, and you're like you've kind of unknowingly programmed yourself to kind of start doing that, just as kind of like a thing that you do when you don't know what to do with yourself. So like you don't know what to do yourself, you pick up your phone and you just mindlessly just like click on different apps and like scroll through it and whatever. And I think all of us have that experience. And like to me, like it was, yeah, as I started becoming more aware of it, I was like, okay, like this is a little concerning to me, especially because of how addictive it is and how addictive it was and how addicted I was to it. Sorry, I don't know if that came out correctly, but I was very addicted to my phone at one point, and I'd say I've improved a lot over the last 2, 3 years because I've tried to be really conscious about it. And so now I'll really only have like maybe a part of the day where I let myself use my phone. And then for the rest of the day, I try to put it away somewhere else and I try to not to go on it because I was like, it kind of scared me, the feeling of like not being in control of something. And it was like, you look at your screen time and it's like 4 hours a day or something, and then you see some other people, it's like 14 hours a day or something. I was like, that's crazy. Like you're spending 14 hours a day on your phone. Like, and it's like I'm young and I'm supposed to be doing things with my life and supposed to be like working towards things. And so I was like, this is not gonna work out for me at all, so it was like social media was addicting, like the phone itself was addicting, and all of these things are designed to be addicting, obviously, because all of these companies, like their entire profit is kind of based on like user engagement. So it's like the more people that they can get to kind of get on the phone and stay on the phone, it's like the more money they're going to make. So everything is designed to kind of pull you in, and you're kind of just left as a consumer to kind of moderate that yourself. And it's very challenging for sure. And I think I struggled with it a lot. And there was like times during that where I was like, can I even get off of my phone if I wanted to, And I really questioned that. And I think now it's like, okay, I've gotten to a point where it's like I have enough control over it again because I've really tried to made it a point to kind of practice that. But before this, I was very like, I probably was like, I don't even know if that's possible. Like, I might
Mhm.
just be too addicted and I might just not have control over this area of my life. And I think that's very concerning. And I think a lot of people aren't even really conscious about that, Like, and they'll go back and like see, like, oh, they're spending hours and hours and hours on their phone every day, consuming all kinds of content, usually which is being marketed to them. And I don't think they realize like how that might be changing them, psychologically and behaviorally even. So,
Mhm. No, yeah. So like I said, I've deleted a lot of my apps and I try to limit the amount of time I spend on social media. The main one I use is YouTube. And so, of course, I'm getting influenced by the videos I click on, although for the most part, they're tailored to my interests. However, the ads, I realize if I search for something, say about potentially becoming a farmer, okay, then I'll get ads about becoming a farmer. And maybe that was just a thought I had, but then I'm getting these ads, and then, part of me is like, okay, I truly do want to change this life I am living and pursue something completely different. But it's kind of crazy how this one little thing that I might have looked up is appearing in as an ad to me several times in a given day, and it truly influences the outcomes I want from my life. But I guess I have a question, and it's that a little while ago you mentioned you're trying to get back into your humanity by doing things like meditation, caring about your friendships, just really getting back to the core of what it means to be a human. And so, with social media, do you think that, or at least from my perspective, it is kind of the opposite of humanity, which isn't some kind of radical belief, but at least I guess from my upbringing, I didn't really develop this sort of individualistic view. Of course, I do see myself as a self separate from other people, but I didn't have this large importance placed on myself. And so when I think of humanity, I guess I kind of associate it with these moral attributes of humanity is kind of equivalent to community, although, of
Hmm.
course, I think that's more of a personal value. But even
Hmm.
when I think back how our ancestors used to live in communities, now they did war with other communities. So it's not to say that humanity is this pure thing. But anyway, I just say that because with social media, I feel like it's this emphasis placed on the self. Your value kind of comes from clout or followers or how visually appealing you are, or maybe whatever you have to offer is. And
Hmm.
so when I use social media or when I observe it, I just think that it's kind of this disconnect between what actual humanity is versus, or when I use social media, I think it's a disconnect between real and what is genuine, or AKA humanity, in my opinion, and what is absolutely fake. Although I know there are some genuine people that use social media and good can come out of it. But I'm curious as to what you think.
No, certainly. I'd say like my perspective is very similar and probably like, towards the end you made that like nuance and stuff. I think I do have the same concern. I think social media kind of intrinsically, at least in the way it kind of is generally used and the way that I see it being used, I think kind of does promote you know, kind of a narcissistic type of behavior. And it's kind of all focused on, glorifying and displaying the self. And in that manner, I think, or in that respect, I think I do have concern, especially for people that are growing up in this culture. I think people our age, we kind of remember a time when there wasn't such a thing as social media and we were kind of just living in the real world, and then it kind of came up as this thing that you could kind of voluntarily choose to have or not have. But I think people in the younger generation, I think I don't know the numbers exactly or anything like that, so I don't, I can't speak to the empirical truth of this, but in general I think because it's such a big part of their culture, I think in general they're probably doing it to a much larger, extent. So I think for them, it's probably a bigger concern growing up with that, like believing that, you know, the ideal life is one that is completely focused on the self and glorifying the self. And I do have concerns about that because I don't necessarily think that's what leads to the most like well-adjusted human being psychologically. I think, everyone, I mean, most people would agree, like humans are very social creatures and we do need that sense of community like you were bringing up to really be healthy, I think, psychologically and socially. So not having that or, kind of having an imbalance in that way, I think could manifest in, maybe a society that isn't as well adjusted because of, maybe some misguided values or certain things like that. Um, and like you said, like I think there are definitely opportunities for social media to be used in a way that is consistent and aligns with the side of us that is, more human. And you see that all the time. Like, I think a lot of things that become popular on social media are popular for exactly that reason, is because I think people on at least an unconscious level still gravitate towards content like that, that isn't just like completely like spiritually or emotionally or mentally like impoverished. Like, yes, there's the trashy side of the internet that is just pure trash, but there's, also people will try to find things that and appreciate things that, do relate to the side of us that is human. And I think that's definitely an obvious thing that people you will see if they go on social media. So I think it can be used in a way to express that side of ourselves and all of that. But I also think for the vast majority of people, that people aren't necessarily using it consciously. And that's kind of where the concern lies, I think, because if you had a society of people who were very conscious about all of these things and thought about all of these things and decided, okay, no, I am going to use social media consciously as, an extension of myself, and the self that is there in reality is a completely like well-adjusted whole human being, then there's nothing wrong with that. My only concern is when, things kind of start moving in a direction kind of opposite from that. And you do see some of that happening, I think in my own personal experience, like if I spend more time on social media and stuff like that, I think naturally, you kind of tend towards like more narcissistic type thinking because you're just thinking about yourself all the time. And I just don't think that's necessarily healthy. And obviously, if you're aware of it, you can be like, okay, you know, um, as long as I am aware of these things and still kind of generally feel like a whole person, or I know exactly why I'm doing these things, then I think it's okay. Because I think the why is also important to look at. Like, why are you on social media? Why are you posting? Um, so that's something to think about for sure.